Would you like to say a little prayer? Okay, for life. And I'm going to start Facebook Live now.
You made the masks.
I did. Feel free to take some.
Oh, they're very cute.
Did you do Harry Potter?
I did do Harry Potter.
Yay!
And I had some leftover donut fabric. I made aprons for the gals at Matty Moose. And I gave Johnny a donut mask. I gave one to my brother, actually, because, you know, he's a big chubby kid. And then Johnny, and then realized the irony that she works in the sheriff's department. That wasn't what I was going for.
Perhaps any donuts.
I bet not.
What do you got box today? It was Don's birthday, so.
Oh, nice.
Ready to go.
I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, so we'll call this
Sorry, stand by. Let me turn this
Colorado
down.
County Board of Health meeting
You
recorded.
made the masks.
Sorry.
Feel free to take some.
Stand by.
Very cute.
This is my child's computer, and I'm not sure how to do that. Okay, well, we got all of our conversations on them. Okay, we're good. Sound is down on this one. Now we're really ready to go.
Please will open this is with discussion of the Governor Bullock's directive allowing phase one information to reopen Colorado County Courthouse. I guess with Sean, you can go ahead and go.
Regarding the courthouse issue, I guess I wasn't really considering that I had much to do with the courthouse itself. I realized that we need to give ourselves time, the courthouse time, to create this space and kind of a plan to make sure that we can have our social distancing that's required and any kind of protection for the staff. Obviously, and then some cleaning. So it's my understanding through the conversations that I've seen email-wise going through that it's going to take about a week to get all of that taken care of. So we would still continue to keep the courthouse at an appointment-only scenario, I guess. And those are, I don't know how long it's going to take. I have to assume that information, it's going to take a week. But so that's what I've got for that.
Yeah.
Teresa, did you have something that?
If we could keep the doors locked until at least the 6th of May, because otherwise we're going to have people running in and out with ballots and it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, so, you know, we have a lot of information that Sean passed out is the stuff that we're going to be having to get out to the businesses and the food establishments. And so to create less congestion in the courthouse, we're going to have them drop them off at the public health department because there's going to be a lot of them. And so we don't want all those business owners running in here just to drop off their forms. So I think we can do that. Collect those at the public health department and then I'll just get them to Sean. So.
Okay.
And everything that you'll see has my email address and I'll be asking them to just send me a photo of their plans or scan, you know, we're in an electronic era. This is nothing new. I mean, that's how we've been doing business before COVID anyway. So we'll be able to continue doing that. What further discussion do you need from our expertise regarding the courthouse? Like as my department, it's very easy. I feel like I can make a plan with Helen when she comes back to maintain the space that we need. Like I can move her to my desk and then we can put a tape line on the floor that shows where people can come into and then stop kind of thing. So we could, it's easy for my office to do that. And then I just maintain my space while I'm there, but I'm not in the office much. And then we can toggle, make sure our hours are different. So, and then, I'm willing to work with any of the staff or any of the departments to come up with a plan for that type of thing. Anyway, it actually is similar to what we were hoping to do in the future for that office with putting a bar or something, not a bar, but there was a cabinet at the bank that we were hoping to kind of put in to our office because people come right up to us at our desk and
You need a Dutch door.
yeah, we need something to maintain some personal space anyway, let alone with what we've got going on here. So this will kind of get that started, I guess, in terms of my department, but we're only talking one person at most of the time. So we can lock the door and make people knock if we have to as well. So that's pretty simple, but definitely can help out other departments if they need any ideas. But I think Mike's probably been thinking about this more than anybody, so.
I'd like to hear from Mike.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I guess I'm thinking beyond this week that we remain closed to get everything in place. I'd like to think about what we're gonna do after that and what our plans might be.
I think like you said in here is still try to continue to do your appointments. Make appointments so that you're not flooding the halls of the courthouse. That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna flood the halls of the courthouse.
If the doors are unlocked, that's what's gonna happen.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely.
There's over 100+ people a day on a light day that come through with. So how do you stop that? How do you slow that?
I think one thing we could do is that. If we had, before the governor's directive, we had a memo go out to staff that said, you may go ahead and close your door, your personal door, and take appointments only. So we could still allow that, and that will keep people from just meandering in if they know that, yeah, you're not gonna get in unless you have an appointment with so-and-so.
But that's not gonna keep them 6 feet apart.
It is
Well-
not, no, and that's another thing when we hear from Mike on, what's the plan for 6 feet apart? This Ann's 100%
I
right.
think we're just gonna have to take lines on the floor all the way out. I think for elections, I think we had a good idea, putting the election ballot box at the end of the hall. So you funnel people in instead of having them come all the way through. They just come in, drop their ballot at the end of the hall, like Monday and Tuesday. Doug and I have been talking about that.
What about Chantel's idea?
There's no, well, we were still talking about that.
Okay,
There's no internet over there, so they have to use a hotspot.
okay.
And they'd have to have 2 people over there who are election judges. With the ballot box. They'd have 2 people.
Oh, okay.
If it's just a secure drop, and it's locked,
They
you have
will,
to have that.
you know, the state told Doug, the election office told Doug no. But we were starting to use it over there, and then they came back and told him that he couldn't use that drop box yesterday.
Due to that,
Yeah, you know more about
that
it.
directive that if you're bringing in more than your ballot, you're supposed to sign whose ballot you're bringing in.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it's
The ballot
called.
integrity act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're still working on the end of the hall then?
That's what we're kind of looking at, is the end of the hall for ballots. Because we know we're gonna get flooded on that Monday, Tuesday.
But if we could keep them down there, then there's more fresh air because the doors are there and they don't have to come all the way in.
Well, you can regulate them. a little
Yeah.
easier. And then also if they have to vote, and they're gonna be required to register, we can get an internet line down at the end of the hall. They can register to vote right down there on a computer down there.
Or,
they can
or if they had to, they could one at a time come into the office.
Correct, and then.
Yeah, which might be easier than trying to set up an internet.
Yes, yeah, so there are a few things that we're kind of throwing. I think we can make that work. It's just the other part of it, you know, like this week is the end of your month, you get a lot of DMV. We got 2 elections coming up, we got taxes. There's a lot of people the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. It's probably some of the busiest part of the year. Besides November.
So with everything that you need to do and all these different pieces coming into play, what we can do is set a tentative open date, and then I would suggest we meet again next week to see how it's going and make sure that we are geared up to open before just putting the doors open. If that's good with you guys, or Chair White. Okay.
But I think we still should encourage, even after next 1 week from Monday, encourage appointments.
Yeah.
Try to encourage appointments. People come in for appointments.
The other question I have is, we have folks wearing masks. I wear mine down the hall in the bathroom because you cannot maintain 6 feet in our narrow little hallway. Common areas, people standing in line, maintaining those lines in the floors we're gonna be putting in. So I'm wondering what we can do about having people wear masks.
At least encourage it.
Yeah, can we require?
We can.
We
If we require it, we have to, provide them.
Okay.
So, that's it. I've been on so many conference calls and listened to so many other counties. Some counties are requiring their employees to have their temperature checked prior to their shift. They have to wear a mask. They have to use hand sanitizer. And we can write those things up and make them mandatory, you know, unfortunately, whether the employees like it or not. You know, the thing is if we screw up phase 1, we're gonna go back. And so it's so important that we really aren't turning a page, really. We're gonna have to keep doing what we're doing to stay where we are and maybe even decrease the count. And so, you know, if people don't keep doing what they have been doing, we're gonna end up going backwards. And so, I'm hearing on my calls that, you know, some of those buildings in Lewis and Clark are so big and they have so many employees, that they decided they're just gonna require temperature checks. And, you know, you only have to do it once a day, you know, at the beginning of your shift. But, you know, if you have a temperature, you have to go home. So, you know, that's stuff that we really do to consider whether we want to do that or not. I know we're opening up for business on Monday, and we are gonna require everybody that comes into public health, to wear a mask. So therefore we do have to provide them, so. You know, and that just has to be a Board of Health, discussion and vote, on what we wanna do.
What would be your recommendation?
I would do it. I take my temperature every day. Of course, right, I can't afford to get sick, so I'm a little bit more paranoid probably than other people. But you know, 80% of people that get COVID do have a temperature. And I know a lot of people say, you know, well, I didn't get sick, I didn't have a temperature, but 80% is a high number. And 80% of people have a fever over 100. So that's a high enough number for me to say, you know, if you got a fever of over 100, you have to go home.
What is the current policy anyway? I mean, typically a fever, if you have a fever would you not already be required under the handbook to go home if you're sick?
There's no requirements in the handbook. It's encouraged. We don't have a requirement.
Right.
I mean, if the schools have a protocol, if you have a fever, you're not supposed to be at least that's what we've always adhered to. I think that's just a no-brainer policy that maybe we need to think long-term about, but if you have a fever, you shouldn't be at work.
Yeah, and Doc, you can chime in here, if you think that I'm wrong, but, generally, people can run a temperature of 100 if they're stressed, upset, lots of different reasons you can have a little bit of an elevated temp. And so most of the time we say 101, then, you're probably sick. But with this particular virus, it was 100.4 and now it's down to 100. It's
we could do that.
It should be lower. Should be lower. I've seen some people with 99.
So what do you do with people coming in though? I mean, we could have temperatures taken in.
We can.
They're employees, but.
They're doing it in the airports and a lot of other places like that. Just means that obviously you would have to hire somebody to stand there and do that. Would it be worth it? I think it would be, but it depends on how we're gonna let people in the building and let them out and that kind of stuff, what decision we come to there.
If I can, I'm really confused. We've been locked in for 3-4 weeks in the courthouse. Why in God's nation we would ever start? Why would we start taking temperatures now? We haven't done it this whole time, and the numbers are decreasing. So why are we making life more restrictive on employees than we haven't done already?
Well,
So if we haven't required them to take a test, which I'm not quite sure how my deputies are going to take their temperature before they check on duty.
And it depends on your point of view. When I've been taking my temperature every day,
Well, I
a lot
understand
of
you,
people have
but
been.
I guess the same point is, in what part do we start quarantining people that are sick and letting healthy people go back to work and doing their thing? That's the question I have. I mean,
Well, I think
I don't want it to be-
one of the differences is we are coming out of a shelter in place. Right?
But our
So
employees have-
our contact, well, granted,
that's the thing is, our employees are still coming to work. We're not. they're
right,
still
but
locked
now
in the
we're
courthouse.
going to have more contact. Outside of the workplace, we're allowed to have more contact. Right?
Yes.
And so that is going to increase our chances more than what we've been at, because we've been sheltering in place. Now, whether people were following that, I can't say, but I have been, my family has been. And so we have to assume that that's been happening. I don't know to what extent we have to go, but I think that
It's exactly the point. The point is that we are opening up and we are gonna have more contact. So it is gonna be a lot likelier that we're gonna run into somebody that maybe has the virus, where before, we're all staying home, only going out for essential things, maybe wearing a mask and gloves in the store, right now. So if everybody just thinks it's, it's open and it's a free for all and we don't have to do anything from on out, like I said, we're gonna be back at square one.
Okay, I got a question for you two then. What happens if somebody, because we're open in Montana, and California is not open, but they have infections, and somebody wants to get away from California, come to their summer home, come to the courthouse, pay their taxes, and then they get tested positive, and they say, well, I was in the courthouse at clerk and recording. What happens? Does clerk and recording all go be quarantined for every single person in there for 14 days?
I brought that up at a meeting. Actually, we still do have the quarantine on anybody that comes into the state. That is still in effect.
But we've had people come in here that didn't care.
I know. We haven't figured out a way to stop that. I asked that very question yesterday. What about the snowbirds? What are we gonna do with them? technically they have to be quarantined for 14 days when they come back to Montana. We don't know who they are, when they're coming back. And so, you know, we're working on a plan, but this is all new and you guys all know it just got dumped in our laps.
So if somebody goes in the Kirkland quarters, we gotta quarantine them for 14 days. And there's no taxes, no DMV, no, elections. Is that correct?
Well, I would assume if they can, you know, do their ballot online or whatever they can do that.
So your point is we should be checking them before they come in the door then?
Or is there a protocol we make so that we can, if we do appointment only, we gotta protect the employees that we have, including deputies. But how do you do it? That's why I'm asking.
Well,
We gotta do whatever we do.
I know.
well, you do, and you know, we can't make a plan for every department that's the same, so.
But what do we do
Right.
with, do we keep appointment only for Kirkland Court? How do we do that?
I think that would be an excellent idea, because if one of us comes down, everyone else is, and there's nobody to come in.
And I think we had that before, so I think what we should do, as far as that goes, is go back to what we had before shelter in place, which was, you may lock your doors, it's by department, so it's up to your elected official or your department head to determine if you're gonna lock your doors and just take appointments, that if you want to do that, the commission will support that. So that takes care of that piece. Now, if sanitation says, nope, our door's gonna be wide open, anyone who wants to walk in, that's okay, that's on them. But if Kirkland Recorder says, nope, we're gonna be appointment only, then that is supported by the commission, and we say,
That's
yeah,
what
we'll
I
do that.
wanna know.
If that's good with you guys.
I'm doing yourself.
So let's think that's the direction we could go.
Yes.
So that question goes back to the ballots then. Are you now at your window, are you guys taking ballots there, or do they have to come through the other?
Right now, the door is locked, so we are encouraging people to mail their ballots, but a lot of people are not.
Okay.
And so they call, we go down to the door, open the door, take the ballot and bring it in.
Okay.
The same thing we're doing with taxes, with motor vehicle, with very few people are being let in, and unless they're doing something that requires actually using a desk, or if we have people coming in to do research, title research and stuff, we're letting one person into the town.
Okay, so that window is a big improvement that you guys have now.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent you could probably have 95% of your interaction with the public through that window, you know, when it picks up, I think that would help. I guess the question, you know, the proposed reopening plan that you sent out, it's telling businesses to do self-assessment for employees, screen customers, use a face mask, et cetera. So, I mean, I'm fine with us doing screenings on employees. I think I asked for this 3 weeks ago, thermometers and masks for.
I wanted to do it at the very beginning too.
Right, so, but I'm specifically thermometers. I mean, we've got some homemade masks, but.
Well, and so thermometers are just like anything else. They got hijacked. Like a thermometer that normally costs $150 is $550. So I was fortunate enough to be able to go on Amazon, anticipating that this was going to happen, and whether I got stuck with them or not, whatever, was able to order a couple of tympanic thermometers for $125 a piece, which are, those are a little bit less expensive than the other ones I was talking about, but a good thermometer, electronic thermometer, is $500 now, and most of them, you can't find them. And I found a couple on Amazon, and so I went ahead and ordered those. So, like I said, you know, we have them, so we can use them wherever they need to be used.
And I guess my point is, the majority of our discussion so far has been about what we're doing here, but most people in the county care more about what they're gonna be doing than what's gonna happen in this building. So like this, if all these businesses are supposed to do this, well, they're in the same boat we are. They're not gonna get thermometers or masks. And I think that's the question is if the board's gonna pass these recommended, reopening plans, which they're prudent, we have to keep in mind that they may not be able to get thermometers either. And
No.
I'm just saying, I think that's what the public wants to hear is probably, I'm guessing, more important to them is what they're gonna do rather than what this building is gonna do. is my guess.
Right.
That's
But
what
we
I'm
have to
hoping.
deal with all of it. We can't just do one thing. We have to
Right.
do all of it.
Have you guys
So-
voted on what to do with the other stuff yet? Okay.
And we don't have to require that, I'm sorry, Nicole, of the businesses, as long as they're following the social distancing and stuff like that. We don't have to require that they do thermometers, but what I'm saying is if somebody from this facility or anybody in our group of employees spreads COVID, what's that gonna look like? It's gonna take one person and all 50 of us get it? We're the leaders of the community? I guess I don't know if I wanna take that chance.
I got one question, I guess. This is coordinated with what we're gonna do outside. I saw in these phase-in things where it says the state, local, and federal agencies are working there for the campgrounds. And I guess the question says I'm taking a lot of calls from citizens about camping at the lake. Were you guys part of that discussion there, of closing the campgrounds around Penny Ferry?
May I answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just, I've got a lot.
I'd like to pick that up later,
Okay.
but the campgrounds were closed, the silos specifically and Goose Bay by BOR. So that was a federal decision. Now BOR has said, because of the managing agreement that we have with Broadwater County, we're gonna give you guys the lead. If you wanna follow the governor's directive, then we will back you on that. So we can open silos on Sunday. We'll have to have a plan for that as well. So yeah, we have that ability.
But just-
And I heard you the other day on the phone and totally agree with you.
This morning I came in and I have several voicemails from citizens that are very angry. I'm like, I don't know why you're yelling at me, but, I didn't do it, but
Yell at
yeah,
somebody.
so
Yeah.
I just checking to see if that was gonna be part of it, so.
I totally agree.
Can I ask a question? You have one public comment from the YouTube. Do you want that now, or are you going to have a public comment?
Take
period?
it now.
Okay. So this is from Bobby at the Broadwater Reporter. She asks, ballots that personally delivered to the courthouse are not physically being dropped into the ballot box by the voter?
That is
Posed as a
correct,
question. Okay, thank you.
because they are not allowed into the building.
But are they picked up by the election judge? So they'll be okay, right?
Right, and everybody in our office is an election judge, so we are allowed by law to take them.
No, I was just.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just-
clarifying.
I'm giving this for the public.
So what's the plan for election day then? Are we just gonna have a ballot box at the end of the hallway with some judges there for people to flow through, or? Because I think if you don't have it open to where people can come and go through there, we're gonna end up with a mass crowd out here with ballots. And we're not gonna violate the policy in here, but we're certainly violating them.
You know, they have the option to mail them, and I would encourage them to mail them rather than try to drop them off. Is it worth taking 55 cents to risk getting coronavirus? I'm just saying.
Like,
Doug and I have been working on for possibly both Monday and Tuesday to open the doors so they can just flow through and drop off the ballots at the end of the hall. That's what we talked about, Doug and I.
And so then will you have that additional temporary person on hand those 2 days?
Supposed to be he said, Chantel and then another election judge he was gonna put out there, and then I was gonna put, Kenny to help flow the people.
Are you talking this Monday and Tuesday?
No.
A week from?
Yeah,
Okay.
the election, the day before ballots are due and the day of.
Okay. Good plan.
So like just run them through one door and out the other door? Perfect. I mean, I think that'll work as long as you know, if we can put up some 6-foot, tape or barriers, you know, like at the airport or whatever, and just have some people out there and say, you know.
We're gonna get cones from the road yard, put them all the way down the walkway, 6 feet apart.
Yes.
And you let them in the door one at a time, and when the other one goes up, the next one can come in.
I don't know why that wouldn't work.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good plan too. So the thermometer and mask question for the public. We could just do the masks if we can get masks. And then we could keep the thermometers in your office, and department heads could send their staff to you in the morning or when they start their shift.
I mean, you know, if everybody comes to work at 8 o'clock, one of us can come over here and do it. You know, it's not that big a deal, really. I think that would be easier than everybody trooping over to public health to have their temperature taken.
So for staff, we could have you come over if that's what we decide to do. For the public, I don't think we need a temperature.
I don't think so.
You.
I don't think we need to. Sean, what do you think? Doc? I don't know.
What's the question?
Whether we're gonna impose on the public, you know, legally through our power to make them take their temperature or wear a mask into a business or whatever.
Oh, people have to use a little common sense to play safe.
I know.
On a non-medical note, I would suggest encouraging masks, but not making
Exactly.
it mandatory.
And
Because there's people won't do it anyway.
you know, once we make some decisions, I think, you know, and everything is in place, you know, we just advertise, and I've already started working on that. You know, we just have to get it out there so people do use common sense, and continue to do what we've been doing. And that's the reason we only have 4 cases, because we've been doing a good job. And so we want to continue to do that in order to move on to phase 2. The better we handle phase 1, the quicker we're going to get into phase 2 and phase 3. So, you know, I know there's some citizens out there that, you know, really feel like their rights are being walked all over. I don't think they would feel that way if they had the COVID, but, you know, it's about us saving lives. And so, I understand civil rights as much as the next guy, but I also am here to prevent people from dying from this disease, so.
What civil rights have been infringed on?
Well, they were in the paper, some of them that, you know, felt like their civil rights are being
What civil
impinged
rights?
on. I don't even remember now, Doc.
What? Free movement.
Assembly.
The fact that they had to stay home and whatever civil right that is. But
One big one, so, yeah, that's the first one.
Well, I can understand that people said that you wouldn't let them go fishing.
The important stuff I
Comment. Do you want comment?
Yeah. You know, camping, and, you know, we're being excluded from, this is one of the arguments that right now is you have, but the campgrounds are closed, that's public lands owned by taxpayers of this country. And for the government to say you can't go on the ground, but technically they feel that's violent. And I'm not far from disagreeing on that as well. You know, it's, again, there's a certain aspect of it, it does say that the federal government has the authority that's delegated by the states.
Well, okay,
So,
doesn't this phase one say maintain social distance?
it does. But there are also directives, and that's the other thing, it's a directive and guidelines, it's not necessarily an executive order. And listening to both President Trump and Governor Bill, they've been very cautious on being dictated in their directive and their guidance. And so that's why a lot of it's going back to the local jurisdiction with set at that stage. You know, I think a lot of, I think Corey could jump in on this. I know that under the first executive order or whatever it was that Governor Bill put out, it didn't really specify. I think that in order to quarantine or shelter in place was more of a directive set forth from the Administrative Department of Health and Human Services, not, and according to my correctly if I'm wrong, I know there's conversation that the governor himself didn't quite have that, to use the ability or the authority of the Administrative Health Department. So Corey might be able to allude to that a little bit more, but there have been a lot of questions on health and human, so. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so the governor's emergency orders are in one area, or his powers, emergency powers are in one area. Statutory scheme for health and quarantine and all those things are really entitled to be under the state CPHHS director and under county or local boards of health. Local boards of health actually have more powers and wide-ranging authority than the state does. And there's two different ways to enforce it, whether it's local or whether it's state. And the enforcement penalties are actually heavier if you violate a local regulation than state. And I guess one of the things to keep in mind here is that this has come up amongst county attorneys. We've talked about this. Are we having concerns that we're violating people's individual rights? There's only one Supreme Court case in Montana on this issue. It's relevant to it. It's from Billings from like 1962. And it was a local board of health that put a quarantine. There was a rabies infestation going on in the city. And the local board of health put a quarantine in and required a bunch of things dealing with dogs. And the deputy sheriff actually shot and killed a dog thinking it was quarantined, and they got sued. And the court said that there was a legitimate public quarantine to protect the public. It was not an unlawful restriction on property or liberty, even if those are incidentally infringed if you are enforcing a public health regulation. The court's gone the other way on other things where they said the Board of Health can't overreach beyond its authority and do things that are not health related. So I don't have any concerns that we're on firm ground. I think we're clearly on firm ground here with what we're doing. What always concerns me is how it impacts, fundamental rights of people. Voting, participation in government are the big ones. Just practicing their religion, those ones. And so in those, you to the extent you can accommodate those and open up the restrictions, you do it. And you can't. And whatever you do, you have to do what's called content neutral or speaker neutral. You can't open up one church and keep another closed, for example. So I don't have any concerns that any of that's happening. The only concern I have is the public being able to access, participate in government, and I am worried about voter turnout being a little reduced because it is difficult, kind of a hassle to turn in the ballot. But then they can mail the 35 cent
Right,
stamp.
because this particular one is a mail-in ballot, and the one in June also was a mail-in ballot. So the only ones who really have to come to the courthouse is if you've got somebody who wants to register as a late registrant, or there is some problem with the ballot. And right now, we're working on making that happen for them.
Right, and so when they were looking at going to that, I suggested to Mako, and they suggested to the governor, and it actually ended up in the thing, that if people, when we go to all mail ballot, if you're not on the permanent absentee ballot list, presumably then you are a person that votes in person or doesn't vote at all, right?
Right.
That if you have to mail in and you're not on the absentee ballot list, that there can actually be a reimbursement through state emergency funds for that, because it's an extra cost to the citizen, really to the county than to the citizen. So as long as, I'm just saying, on all these things, what I'm always trying to do is encourage us to strike the balance to support their exercise of liberty, access to government, exercise of religion, to the extent we can without unduly impacting it. Knowing, of course, that what we're doing in a normal time would never have been allowed, but we're not in a normal time.
So I think we've covered the courthouse, right? So we could move on to
Did you set
the
a
business
tentative
ones.
date?
What's that?
Did you set a tentative date? You said
Oh,
that you
thank
would.
I think it was implied, but we didn't
Yeah.
set it.
Yeah.
I would suggest the 4th of May with a meeting, like next Thursday, to evaluate how we're coming and if we're ready for a mass opening. What do you guys think?
Well, I wrote down the 6th for some reason.
The 6th would be a Wednesday, right? And that was what Ann had requested, so it'd be after the.
Oh, after the
After
election?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm good with the 6th. And we have tentatively a meeting scheduled for the 4th. We could change that, or we could make that our Board of Health meeting as well to see how we're doing if we're ready for an opening on the 6th. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Okay.
The public comment.
These are a little older, but this is from Naomi Nugent. She asks if masks are going to be mandatory, which I think you discussed. Also from Naomi Nugent, what is the board's opinion on the schools possibly opening? And let's see, a third one from Bobby at the Broadwater Reporter. Can we publish a PSA regarding this election procedure? Our office received complaints about not being allowed to drop their own ballot. Some people rather deliver their ballot versus mail.
So one thing that I would suggest, if you have people picking up the ballots, if they're not wearing an election judge badge, that might be something that would help the people understand that they are handing it. I mean, that might be something that could be done to help with that. I don't know if that is, but and I think it is a public service announcement explaining the protocol. It seems like a really simple way to let people know. You know, start it off with please mail your ballot
Yeah.
in really big print, and then the protocol on how you guys are going to handle that. But I think letting them know that an election judge is the one that's receiving the ballot is probably important.
I think that's a really good idea. Even something as simple as those name tags, you know, that hello, my name is, just stick it right on every morning, and then that way people have that to look at, because maybe they just don't understand they are dropping the to an official.
Because obviously the ballots get handled at some point by someone,
Right.
and that's the election judges. So it doesn't magically just count itself.
I think I have a bunch of those stick-on name tag things over at the office.
We probably have them,
You
some,
probably,
yeah.
if you don't, let me know though, because I know I do. I have quite a few of them.
And I think we could do a PSA also through the BCDC email list, which I think gets to the most people. And then also our website, we could put it right front and center. That would be a big thing, Nicole. And just kind of how to vote.
There was a question about the schools, and I feel like the schools kind of need to evaluate that. The governor has given very specific guidance on how to do the phase one. And I think as long as they are adhering to that, without knowing their plan, I think my comment is let them pursue that. Following the
I think
guidance.
they have a meeting Monday, if I'm not mistaken, school board meeting.
Yeah, that's what
so,
was said in the meeting yesterday, right?
Do you guys attend that? The commissioners normally attend that? No.
No,
No,
but
but
Eric
Laura
said
asked
he'd let us
for-
know, yeah.
Or like immediate written.
Yeah.
No, so we know, because it impacts everything that we do and how we think. It impacts which employees we can assume we're gonna come back to work and things like that, so.
It's interesting though, because I think the Board of Health actually does have power over the school and the school board. But I think we should make it their decision, they're the ones that have to go through all the, but I want to be involved if they do open it back up.
That's fair.
So we want to go on to our guidelines for eligibility to reopen bars, pubs, wineries, casinos, and food service operations.
So I prepared it, and Teresa helped with this, and some of the other counties. We've been working on some guidance on how to reopen the bars. And you'll see that there's kind of what needs to be done, and then there will be a form that they fill out. However, over the weekend, one of the Sanders County Sanitarian and I are going to come up with plans for, if you are a bar, this is what your plan should be. We want this to be easy because it's going to be super time consuming for us if it's not easy. If we have to go back to them and say, well, you didn't address this. So we are going to try to spoon feed these plans to them. They will still have to do some things because every facility is different, and every, how they're cooking and things like that, or, what they offer. So that's going to be part of it, but we are going to come up with plans for each one of the types of facilities and make it as easy as possible. And those, I'm hoping, we may not have them quite ready on Monday, but on Tuesday, because we want to give the facilities a week because they'll be open on May 4th, or have the ability to be open, as long as they follow the guidance that the governor has given and in kind of our directives. So I think hopefully we can make it as easy as possible for the licensed establishments like this, the bars and that. So.
And so, we will, we can decide whether we're, we can make it mandatory that they wear masks, that they take temperatures, or we can just make it a really strong recommendation. We just have to decide, how we're going to do that. And then just do a lot of teaching.
Yeah, and I think, like a cook in the back kitchen probably doesn't need to have a mask on, assuming that they're not sick, which at some point we have to assume that they're not sick, I think, because they will have done, we have to require, it's actually in the governor's phase one plan, that they have to conduct a health assessment, whether that means temperatures or if it just means a conversation. How are you feeling today? Are you feeling fever? It's the same thing that they're actually required to do every day anyway.
But they don't.
But this, will be very specific to the coronavirus. I think, I don't know. I wear a mask because I am going throughout the county all the time. I've been at 5 or 6 different sites today. So I feel like I could be a huge vector if I'm not careful, if I get it and spread it and that. So I wear a mask because of that. And it would be my recommendation to have, someone that's serving food wear a mask as well. But that's just, I'm being very hypersensitive to that. So. If we require it at a restaurant, we only have to provide it for our own employees, correct, Teresa?
Pardon?
We would only have to provide masks for our own employees if we require it.
If we
right? So-
require it, we have to provide them just to our employees,
Yeah,
just
so-
to the county.
Okay, so if you required it of a business, then they would have to supply it to their.
Right, and they don't have to be the N95s, they just have to be a covering.
Just like what I'm
Sure.
wearing, or a homemade one.
Yeah.
And I was gonna bring up the church thing. So I've had conversations with most of the pastors and, they're doing what Nicole did, having their church group ladies, make up some masks real quick. Just some kind of covering. So, you don't have to go out and search and try to find N95 masks or surgical masks or anything like that. You can wear a bandana. This is a droplet virus. So if we can prevent that, we're ahead of the game. So.
But there's also education on how to wear a mask, what to do, what not to do. I mean, it's tricky. If I'm going from site to site, I try to keep the mask on. So I'm driving down the road with the mask on, but the more you touch your mask, the more chances you're going to contaminate yourself or your hand, and then you touch your face, which is impossible not to do. So part of having the mask on just keeps you from touching your face as well. So, I don't know, I guess that's the only thing that I don't have a full, that's a pretty important thing if we're going to require that maybe servers or, where are we gonna draw the line on who wears masks, and that we probably need to have that discussion now.
We have to make a decision on that before we can move forward with these documents. So,
If we can't maintain 6 feet, you wear a mask. That's the standard, isn't it?
and how, you're right, absolutely
So
right.
a cook,
So you can't,
a waitress not gonna be able to maintain 6
Yeah.
feet.
you can't give somebody their food and stay 6 feet apart. So that would be, a violation of social distancing. So I would say that, at least the waitresses or anybody who is taking money or anything like that, if they cannot maintain a 6 foot, they should be wearing a mask.
I have 2 more comments here. One is from Bobby at the Broadwater Reporter. How will directives for bars and restaurants be enforced? And a second comment from Naomi Nugent. So even the bartenders?
So I think it's at 6 foot. That's gonna be our guidance.
It's still all about social distancing, and I can tell you, that is the main takeaway from everything is social distancing. And so if you can't maintain that, then you should wear a mask.
So, the reality is they have this option of not opening or putting on a mask.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
this phase 1 is allowing them to start pursuing some income and start working with the small caveat that they have to wear a mask. So I think that what we're asking is not that hard. And it's phase 1. And, we could be back here in 2 weeks into phase 2, or we could come back and be talking about a phase 1B that allows more leniency. You know, we just don't know, but I think let's get these facilities open. This is a way for us to do that.
The other thing too is in Georgia, when they opened, I think it was today, what they found was places were still empty. There's a lot of fear out there. You're hearing from 7 or 8 or whatever that percentage is that are afraid of that their civil liberties are being stolen. But then you've got 80% of the people out there who are sheltering in place because they do not want to catch this or give it to their loved ones.
Right.
So I would think if we do help the businesses by requiring masks, I think it will put more of a calm in the public and they will be more apt to come in and spend their money, go out to eat, buy a drink.
I know where I would go versus where I wouldn't. If I saw people wearing masks, I mean.
Yeah, I think the numbers of that are pretty strong.
I was
We've seen it.
desperately looking through my folder because I have a new motto. And I printed it out, but I failed to bring it with me. I'm not wearing this mask for me, I'm wearing it for we. And so I know that is what it's all about, so.
We should put that on the doors.
Yep.
And I have been working on a lot of different, there's so much out there. We're just picking out stuff that is, you know, that I plan on offering businesses. You know, there's just so much stuff out there that you can, print off and, 6-foot stuff. So I just made a copy of some of them, and the most important ones, though, I think are, there's a new one, is Stop If You Feel Sick. And this is mainly for, you know, like workers and stuff. Do not enter if you have these things. Call your healthcare provider and go home. And then just the basics of the COVID. It's easy to read. And so this is the stuff that I'll be offering to businesses when I go to visit them. And hopefully take down some of the old stuff and get some new stuff put up, and, you know, just try to get everybody educated as well as we can.
Excellent.
So is there a motion for any of this, or what?
You know, we didn't do one for the courthouse. I think we should do one for that and for each of these.
Okay.
And so,
And I think we should set a date. So if we're gonna decide to do temperature checks, you know, we'll agree to do those, you know, and we can set a time, you know, that somebody will be over here to do that. And just, you know, take it a week at a time. I mean, I just don't, you know, we want to get to phase 2. That's our objective. And so the better we do in phase 1, the quicker we're going to get to phase 2. And I hope that that's the message I want to get out to the public, is that, you know, let's just keep going a little bit longer. You know, we've done good so far, and that's why we haven't had very many cases in Broward County. So let's just keep it up and see how fast we can get to phase 2. So just make a motion that we do this, and we'll reevaluate at on a certain date.
how much time would you want to reevaluate this one on the businesses, the bars, the casinos, restaurants?
Because you have more food service.
I
and
feel
have-
like we can, if we're meeting, well, we will be setting a date, another Board of Health meeting sometime after the 4th. So we're meeting on the 4th, but we're gonna be implementing this between now and the 4th, and then they'll open on the 4th. So I guess 2 weeks always seems to be this nice number that we.
It kind of seems to be what the actually what the governor kind of goes on too, as far as, when this, he's in touch with the state people that I'm in touch with every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And so, generally they'll put something out there and just see how it works for, a couple of weeks and then come up with, something new. Or if President Trump wants everybody to drink bleach or something like that, we would have to come up with another plan.
And we have another
But-
pandemic.
Yeah, technically though, we have to do phase one.
Yes,
We have to follow phase
We
one.
have
And that's
to do
actually
phase
directed
one.
by, so I don't know if we need to reevaluate, I mean, we can reevaluate it in-house, but I don't know that our policy is mostly following the governor's directive, right?
Yeah.
yes.
Because we could be in phase one for months, or
We
we
could
could
be.
be in it for
Mhm.
weeks, we just don't know. So
So
putting it,
like tentatively the 11th, the week after the 4th, 2 weeks roughly, just to see how everything's going. If it's going great, we're done in 5 minutes. Is that kind of what,
so they
But
actually
here-
won't be implemented until the 4th, so I would say
2 weeks after
18th.
that?
yeah.
So there is a possibility, and this came through, my higher up people, that, they may change it and counties may be able to move through the phases faster. So I'm a little worried about our county just because of where we are. And the fact that Lewis and Clark is shutting down their campgrounds until May 31st. So if ours are open, you know what's gonna happen. And that worries me because I'm a very avid camper fisherman. So, and Gallatin County, that concerns me because they're all gonna come here if our campgrounds are open. So.
Our Gallatin guys can't go school.
I don't know about Gallatin, but I know Lewis and Clark is closed. Theirs are all closed until the 31st, which is of course involving Memorial Day. So that's another big issue for us. It's gonna be an issue for Winds Department. It's gonna be an issue for, public health. So that is something else that we do need to kind of focus on at least in the next week or so.
Well, and if I may, in regards to this, and the other sheriff asked me about it, people go out to campgrounds, and they start setting up camps, and they aren't. I can go out there and say, hey, this is closed, but in the same breath, if they say, I'm not leaving, I don't have the arrest authority to hook them. Because both felony on this is there's a civil penalty. You're not technically trespassing. So the other problem is, even if I did arrest them, that camper's still sitting there because I don't have a budget to start towing cars. That tow company, the only two tow companies we have are both out of free for us. I don't think we want to start looking at $500 to $750 tow bills for every person that decides to pull that camper out to the lake.
No.
So, that's something I guess when we start talking about enforcement components of this, there's a cascade effect that comes down the pipe there. So, I know there's a lot of contentious issues with Lewis and Clark County and the fact that they closed every state, local, and federal campground down. I know that's not selling well up in that area. But I thought that, in the governor's press release on Tuesday, press conference, I thought that he was affording the local jurisdictions to kind of develop their own plan with what's going to work best for them. And forgive me if I've seen out of sorts here, but I'm a firm believer that standing outside in fresh air is probably a heck of a lot better than sitting inside the closed building. So, and I know some people might disagree with that, but we have a lot of anxious folks, and I think that the problem that we're having, what we're facing in regards to this is that when it started, it was give us 2 weeks, then give us 2 weeks, and give us another 2 weeks, and people are going, okay, we're at week 6. Enough's enough. And I think that's where we're starting to get some very frustrated, angry people involved, in regard to that. So, you know, I think that developing a plan that's safe and proactive, but again, remember what we put our citizens through, in some aspects. And I, you know, everybody's watching the news and they're paying attention, and so when you look at the 8 states that didn't shelter in place, or don't have shelter in places, those numbers are no different than areas that have shelter in place. So, and some are necessarily lower. So I guess that's what people are bringing up to me, is the fact that a lot of the models and the data are not what's been presented initially when this all started.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's.
They don't know all the work that went behind all that either. So, but the reason that I brought that up, Win, is because we do have to make a decision on that. And regardless of whether we open our campgrounds or not, we still have social distancing. It still has to be policed. The Board of Health has the authority to open them up or shut them down. So, so we do have to make that decision. And, you know, how are we gonna police that, you know? So we have to make
Can I
a
make a motion
decision.
on this one? Take care of it,
Yeah,
get it
yeah.
off the table,
That's
and then
what I'd
move
like
on
to
to
do,
another
too.
subject.
We have a couple motions we need to make on some things.
Yeah.
Let's close down and move on.
So I move that we adopt the guidelines for eligibility to reopen bars, brew pubs, wineries, casinos, and food service operations to dine-in customers as presented, with a meeting scheduled on the 18th of May to see how it's going.
Is there a second? There is a second, and then I guess part of that discussion was, are we gonna require servers for people that can't maintain the 6-foot distancing to wear a mask? And I think that we should.
I'd accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. And then I did have a question, which will go to Corey, with regards the enforcement penalties and things for this. Talk with us a little bit about that.
So if you pass this as a local board of health restriction, and then your enforcement is, there's 2 ways to do it. You can do a civil action, or basically I file civil action, or the judge will basically order them to refrain from a violation. It could be an injunction, something like that. The second is that it actually could be prosecuted as a misdemeanor, and it's that penalty is 6 months jail, $500 fine is the maximum. That's if it's a local violation.
All right. Good. And then my last question, I guess, Sean, is, it says on here, this needs to be approved by the Broadwater County Health Officer.
That's where I get my authority.
Okay.
So he would basically have to they give me my authority already through the health officer. I believe that's how it works. So he'd have to trust me like he does every day.
All right.
So, can I ask a clarifying question? So, and it's more important. So if it's under the criminal penalty, so is that something that we have to do because the sheriff's office?
Yeah. So that statute's 50-2-204, I think, and it says that the local health officer can request local law enforcement assistance to enforce, and it says if the local law enforcement doesn't do it, then it's like, it's not good. I can't remember.
Which, I don't know, how somebody who's appointed has authority to remove an elected official, but that's something for the legislation to figure out. The question I have then is, when you said, on the back of this, are you saying this is how many people? So I'm thinking about the brewery, if they have a sign that says maximum capacity 74, is that, are you gonna say, when you go in there, we only have 37 people in there?
I guess unless the distancing requirements we said are small.
Okay, so I guess that's where, I mean, I didn't see in here, on here where you were gonna say how many people could be in there. So if somebody says, hey, there's a social distance, and we had complaints when this all started, is there's too many people in a certain establishment. So, I mean, I guess I would like to know if we have something like this that says if you can only have 20 people in here, and we walk in with 25, you know, that gives us.
Yeah, so their
some factual
plan, they have
basis.
to, that is what will happen. They have to come up with a plan for their facility that I sign off on. And it will be very specific to that extent.
So
How
that's,
they're going to show that they meet that 50% reduction in capacity and how they're going to maintain six feet. So,
so they have that plan, so if we have an issue, we can walk in and say, look, we have, let me see your plan, first off, right?
Yep.
And then, that's gonna be one of those things from a litigation aspect, you're gonna say, hey, I only have 20, and then I'm authorized 30.
right.
So, and it does come back to what Doc Campbell said, in a certain aspect, it's gonna use common sense. But I just, that was a couple questions I had.
Thank
Back
you.
up.
I second the motion. Motion been made and seconded to improve the guidelines for eligibility to reopen bars, brew pubs, wineries, casinos, and food service operations to dine-in customers. Any further discussion?
I have comment. This is from Bobby at the Broadwater Reporter. She says, enforcement. How will we enforce this directive? We have limited public safety officers. Who is responsible for checking in with these businesses?
I think that just got answered.
Okay.
It's probably gonna be a complaint-driven process, and they'll have a plan as approved by the sanitarian. And then if there's enforcement, it would come through the sheriff's office. More than likely, my expectation is not that on day one, Lynn's gonna be putting people in jail. My expectation is it's gonna be a, hey, you need to fix this, okay, sorry. I mean, I'm certainly, you know,
I'm
trying to resume life here, give some warnings and some opportunities to correct is what I think is likely to happen. Ultimately, if someone gives us the finger and keeps doing it day after day, then yeah, we can escalate from there.
Well, and I think that's where, you know, from that comment, we put people in jail. We have the disability rights of Montana that really say we try to get people out of jail, across this nation and across the state. I have a hard time kicking felons out of jail and put somebody in a misdemeanor. That makes no sense to me. So, but I do agree that, you know, I'm a little reluctant, to be honest, at this point, if we're gonna go down this path that we're gonna do warnings. You know, maybe we could do a civil penalty as a first step, that is maximum $100 fine. But then the next one would be the criminal penalty at the $500 fine. And I think that'd be a more advantageous process to go through versus just giving out a warning, because warnings obviously don't need very much stuff.
I specifically posed that question to the state and, they said, you know, one warning, next time you're getting fined. The owners are gonna know how many people are supposed to be in their facilities. They're the ones that are supposed to be controlling that. If people complain that there's 30 people in there and there's only supposed to be 25, somebody's gonna call and tell us, and that owner's gonna get a warning, and then the next time they're gonna get a fine.
Well, we also license them. These establishments
Right,
have
they can
multiple
lose their
Not only
license.
in a bar has a liquor license, which is, you know, they could compromise that.
Well, and you think that
They can lose their gaming licenses, everything.
we've had some discussion with sheriffs, and I hate to hijack your conversation, especially the sheriffs have had conversations about this, and we have the Department of Justice as well. The fact is people that are violating, if you walk in a bar and your people are within 6 feet of each other, technically, shame on them, they can also get a ticket as well as the bartender, because the bartender is in that building and they're supposed to be responsible for what's going on, as well as the bar owner should be very attentive. So in reality, it could be multiple people getting a citation, not just the owner of the bar. So that bartender's got responsibility as well. So I mean, if we're gonna put it out there for the public to know, probably not screw around.
Now, you talking about families?
No.
Another thing is as long as people have been pretty cooperative with this stay-at-home business, what's the possibility of opening up the campgrounds during the day?
They are open, the campgrounds are open during the day, just no overnight camping.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all day use. They can
So,
drop their
some
boat.
boy can take their boat out there and go fishing, he can run his dogs out there.
They can't be in there from 10 o'clock at night till, I believe it's, 5 in the morning.
And if people complaining about that?
They are.
So I have, did you guys vote on that?
No.
Oh, you didn't vote.
So, we're still opposed. So do we have a vote then? Do you have a comment?
One more thing, I misspoke on the penalty. So there's several different categories of penalties. The maximum penalty would be a fine of not less than $10 or more than $500, and up to 90 days in jail. Each day of violation could be a separate offense. So that's the maximum level. There's some fines that are kind of tiers below that as well. So,
Any further discussion? Motion been made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Can I go back and make a motion on the courthouse piece?
Yes.
Get that off the table
too.
So I move that we, adopt the plan for the courthouse per the memo with some changes. Changing the date for opening to May 6th, a Wednesday, 8 a.m., tentatively, pending the May 4th Board of Health meeting to ensure we're ready. Also a bullet under department heads for daily operations. Department heads may schedule with public health to have temperatures taken for their staff. And, we have an election plan for May 4th and 5th. We approved that or support that for Doug and his staff. All are certified election judges. And we recommend the public wear masks, wash their hands, use sanitizer, and we're going to follow an education campaign for that. And it's okay for staff to leave their personal doors locked and work by appointment only. And that is up to department heads. Did I catch everything?
Is there a second? No, second. Motion been made and seconded to adopt the Brevard County Health Department policy for the Brevard County Courthouse. Any further discussion? Yes.
Public comment? Bobby, Broadwater reporter. Does this mean the primary election might be open to public election instead of mail-in only?
No.
Any other comments?
Yeah, under law and the governor's directive, you still have to figure out a way to accommodate late registration and vote.
And we're working on that.
Okay, yeah, that'll be.
Yeah.
And that's not Board of Health.
Any further discussion? Motion been made and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, same. Motion carries.
I have a follow-up
You
question.
bet. I have it written down.
I have a follow-up question here, public comment from Bobby, Broadwater reporter. So mail-in only, question mark?
Yes. Except for late registration, blah, all the other stuff is covered under law, but it will be a mail ballot.
Thank you.
I want to hijack it before we get to the campgrounds because it's just a follow, this is the next piece of, and so Salon, there are facilities that were closed by the governor under his directive that are now allowed to reopen starting on Monday, the 27th. And the directive says that they need to also make sure that they follow guidance. So this document would be very similar to a food establishment saying you have to come up with a plan to reopen. What I need to know is what are the boundaries that you want from me to do that? Because any facility that was told to be closed, I would need to reach out to and come up with a plan with them. And that could be I don't know, like the Hallmark store, whatever, the store that sells cards downtown that was not deemed essential. And if they were closed, I would have to help them come up with a plan. So, but there's also facilities that are licensed, like hair salons, that do need to have a pretty good plan. So, there's a broad spectrum of where do you want, and Teresa can help with this too, but where do you want us to, how far do we go? Do we want to do some quick education by going downtown, talking and giving educational documents, or do we want to, like in the case of a salon, actually make sure they have a plan in place? And they're licensed, they have a state license. That's where this document was more in line with establishments that are licensed. But in talking with Teresa, we have there were facilities that were closed that are now being allowed to open. And I need to know if we want to be pursuing plans with those folks as well, or where do we draw the line for what we need to be doing?
So Sean, I had some thoughts after you and I talked on the phone about that, and there are some businesses that the proprietors have a license, like hair salons and stuff like that. And so when you're talking about people who have licenses, who just like the casinos can lose their gaming license, I think those people really need to have a plan, because if for some reason, something would go wrong, that potentially could have an impact on their license. Just like, if I give somebody bleach by mouth, I could lose my nursing license. So thinking of that, I think that the people who are required or do have a license to operate a business like that in Montana probably should fall under that for sure.
So with that
that's kind of
being,
like hairdressers, but anybody else.
That's, I think massage therapists have to body art, and this did say other like establishments or something.
Certificates of whatever they have to get to operate.
But in thinking about where did we get complaints, we got complaints at the lumber mill, and that obviously doesn't fit here. But if they were to reopen, the same people are most likely going to complain if there isn't some sort of plan. And I mean, we can always reach out to them and say, hey, we'll help you come up with a plan. That's what we're here for. I mean, that's what this is all mostly about education and trying to help with that. So we can put that as an advertisement or something saying, hey, if you're struggling figuring out what to do with your business in terms of COVID-19, contact us and we'll help you come up with a plan. We don't have to. I guess I don't feel like we need to go to every single establishment that's reopening that was closed.
Well, in reading this, Sean, it specifies operations that require close personal contact for an expanded period, resulting in exposing staff and customers to a greater level of risk. So that's where the salons and that comes in. Some of your other businesses are not going to be in that situation.
Right. Yeah. So we're looking at tattoos, nail, hair, stuff like that, where you cannot do those things and maintain social distancing. So,
you have to have some sort of plan.
They need a plan. Yeah. And if they can't come up with a plan, then we will help them.
So would it be too onerous on you guys if we just had if you want to open, just have a plan? Just give it to everybody, that requirement, because the people who are more of a retail business still should be getting that same education, still has the opportunity for not having the social distancing.
So I think Teresa and I both agreed that we would probably early next week walk down Main Street. I mean, I think that's the biggest area, and then there may be a few salons that are
home
people's
salons
homes or that, but we'll have to reach out to them individually, but
Mhm.
I think we're fortunate that we're not a much bigger county that still only has 2 people.
So you're
Right,
really
here's the
looking at
list.
education.
Yeah, and we can,
Okay, so you guys are kind of already on top of this.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
we've had our conversations, yeah.
Is it all encompassed in here then, as far as what your plan is, your question to us about the census equals a plan, and just talking to retail outlets?
Yeah, so I
You
think,
don't need that
I don't
spelled
know.
out by us, right?
Well, I don't know if there can be a one-stop shop on this, you know, just because there's gonna be so many different situations. You know, I mean,
I think we can use this for licensed or certified establishments. And then the Board of Health, you all can just say, go forth and educate, you know,
Yeah.
to the rest of
Okay.
those. And I think that's probably a good solution, because then we can cater to those businesses specific to that. And it's just gonna, we're not talking, I think we can do it all in the next week and get that in.
I think we can.
And everyone is so educated on this topic. I mean, we are not,
Yeah,
we don't have to educate them on it. Just give them some new ideas, some fresh ways to look at it, I think, so.
unless you don't have a TV or radio, which we do have a community, that doesn't. You know, most people are already looking into what they're gonna do when their, establishment, opens up. But along that line, just so you know, that I have weekly contact with the, Amish community, so. They,
So do I, they're putting in drain fields every week.
But they are educated on what they can and can't do, and they are super good about it. They do not want to break any rules, and they've been very congenial. So that's good. But yes, we just started this after I talked to Sean, started this list of, holy cow, I didn't even think we had that many businesses in Townsend. So we started our business list, and I'm sure we're not even done, with this. It was like about an hour project, and, in between phone calls, so we have a good place to start.
So we want them to be open.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is education on that, at that point, so.
Okay. So then, is this too preliminary to make a motion on this?
Well, I think you can do a motion if you say that this is for license, because all of those facilities require a license.
So adding, between other and establishments in the title licensed,
Sure.
would cover it.
Yeah, non-food or something like that.
So I will move that we adopt the guidelines for eligibility to reopen personal care services, salons, massage, body art, and other licensed establishments as is contained in this document.
I'll second that motion. Motion been made to approve the guidelines for eligibility to reopen personal care services, salon, massage, body art, and other establishments, other licensed establishments. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carried.
And I will move to authorize the sanitarian and public health director to visit the retail and non-licensed businesses to touch base and conduct education.
Second that. Is there a second? Yeah. Motion been made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
So with the silos, I've talked to Dan, when he's gone, no, he's not. I talked to Dan Stremka, who's with Bureau of Reclamation today. And I think this was said earlier, but they said that we can choose to open the silos campground if we would like. They will follow our lead on that because of our managing partner status. So he said we do need a plan. So I put one together, and we can just use it as a straw horse. We can chop it up, we can highlight, we can X out, whatever you guys want to do. So we've had some of this conversation already. We can go ahead and have more. Sharon is well aware of the requirements with social distancing, and the campground spaces are about 30 feet apart. It's also on a windswept plain. It is not, confined in the trees. There's a lot of sun. So there's a lot of things about silos that is attractive to camping. The spaces are also only allowed to be single-family spaces. Can't have group camping in silos. That's a requirement from the federal level prior to COVID. The campground host is a ex-police officer. So for enforcement, he knows how to deal with people, knows what's required. So I guess that's enough for a start.
So how, how tough do we want to be on this? I know just, we go camping every weekend. And, other than us, there's probably nobody out there that doesn't have a 6-plate. That scares me to death because of Bozeman's, outbreak there. I don't want to shut them down. I think people should recreate. I think that's the best thing for us right now is to recreate. The problem is smaller campgrounds that are not developed, like Duck Creek, where they don't have any facilities. They don't have any water, any electricity or anything like that. I know Winds Department patrols that some, but the rule is small family groups and still social distancing. And I think the problem that I think we can do it, but I think the problem that we're gonna run into is, like Wynn said, people aren't gonna do it. But I think if we could get some good signage made, and this is just my thinking, get some good signage made that says, these are the rules, and you will be towed at your own expense. I know that doesn't always work, but, this campground can have X amount of campers, small family groups. Your camper has to be this far away from this camper because there's no, I don't know how much you all know about Duck Creek, but there's no slots or sites or, you just pull in wherever the grass isn't 4 foot high, So we have to decide how, if we're gonna open them and keep them open, what's that gonna look like?
We only have authority to open silos.
That's right.
Duck Creek
Oh,
is
we don't
federal.
have that.
Right, we're only a managing partner with silos. And so even though it is federal, they have said we can take the lead. Duck Creek, Hellgate, Avalanche, Goose Bay, those are all federal without that managing partner element. So they are all going to remain closed.
So they're
For
gonna
BOR.
remain closed.
Yeah. Now, BOR doesn't know what's coming up the pipe. So.
Okay, because that was not what I understood, but maybe I misunderstood.
Yeah, so we're just
Okay.
talking about silos. That's all.
Just the
that's all we want.
silos.
Yeah.
So like maybe one thing we could consider if we decide to open this is maybe not open the whole facility at one time. Maybe just open up part of the camp spots for a week and see how that works. And then, do a phase approach like we're doing with these other things. And if it goes well, then we can maybe consider opening some more.
If you want to spread people out.
Yeah, and then spread
Why
people out.
funnel them in? So if we have to have some trust in our concessionaire and her campground host and Diggers who does the cleaning. If you tell her what the rules are, she already knows this. And then, the signage that says, if you screw this up, we're going backwards and this is going to be shut down. But if you only do one loop and you have everybody right next to each other, you're creating a problem.
But can't you?
If you open up the
Regular zone?
campground and you have the same number of campers,
Right.
you're spreading them out because campers don't want to camp on top of each other. So if there's a guy here in this loop, the next camper is going to go to the next loop, and they're already social distancing because that's what campers do.
So are we thinking that they're gonna fill?
Well, I guess my
Everything
thought, I
else
guess
is
I don't know
no,
how it works. I
we're
would
not.
thought that, because doesn't Sharon have the ability to say which loop you can go to? Can she spread them out for us?
No,
But
They don't
She
take
can.
reservations.
she
either.
could, but she doesn't have the personnel for that. You're talking about more staff for her, more cost. That we're not gonna have the Californians and the Canadians and all the the Germans, a lot of Germans go to the silos. You are not gonna have that influx of out-of-staters, out-of-countryers coming to silos. We are talking about locals, maybe folks from Bozeman, maybe folks from Helena, maybe boaters from the region. It is not going to be the silos of last year. We just don't have the people coming in from the other states.
one of the things that Laura and I talked about briefly was, my concern is shared use areas like the bathrooms. And we could consider that they have to be self-contained units only on the site. So people would have to be in an RV that has self-contained units. Or they could have a porta potty delivered to their site. I mean, that is an option, but I think it would be very, I don't know that cleaning the facility twice is good enough, and you can't just put a use at your own risk sign on the bathroom. So, I don't know, I know that the locks maybe don't work on there, but we can still put closed, a sign that says that they are closed. And, the concessionaire can then, hopefully, if there's people that need space that don't have their, units that have bathrooms in them, she can keep them at her place and the other people can then use silos. I don't know, but that's my concern is the shared use aspect of the bathrooms.
Yeah, I think they need to be closed, honestly.
And we can do that.
I wonder if, and I'm just throwing this out there, because I've camped at the silos too, if they would consider taking reservations.
She's not set up for it. The DOR was going to actually get that implemented. With COVID, they put the training this fall. It was going to be in May or June, I forget which. So she just doesn't have the technology.
There are individual sites though, right, with like a number?
That is correct.
So we could,
Yeah.
if we wanted to, we could close sites.
Every other one
site.
throughout the
We could-
campground.
right,
That
We
would
could do
work.
that.
Yeah.
Because what
And that's
happens
easy.
out there, and I'll just tell you from personal experience, the reason I don't go there is that sometimes there's like a camper and 5 cars and 6 tents. And I don't think that's supposed to happen, but it does happen. And that's gonna be a lot larger than a small family group, which is what the directive says. So, small family groups in social distancing and blah, blah, blah. So, that is going to put more pressure on the camp host to regulate these folks that bring a camper and 5 tents. So, so we may have to, have a conversation with her. That just can't happen. You know what I mean?
She knows as
She
well.
knows, yeah.
Yeah. The silos of last year and the understanding of COVID this year is well understood as silos. So, and you guys can certainly follow up with Sharon and talk to her. I won't say much more about that, on camera. But there's a solid understanding of COVID for the people who run the silos. But we can't compare this summer to last summer. It's apples and turkeys.
Well, even the spring right now, or the
Right.
summer.
Or next
So
summer.
bathrooms stay closed, is that at least until we get to phase 2 and do self-contained only,
Mhm.
okay?
And then what, close every other campsite?
How many sites are on there?
I think there's 68.
Yeah, it's quite.
And they're not all gonna be filled this year, but if we did want to, through phase 1, do every other throughout the campground,
Mhm.
we can do that.
I think that seems really smart.
And what I would say is not necessarily through phase 1, but also revisit this like we are the others.
And the reason we would have to do that is because not all the sites are the same,
Right.
square footage or whatever, and distance apart. Because I know when we've taken large groups out there, we try to get, these two sites, because they're really close together, and, you can rent both sites and still have, so the distance between the sites, is not the same. And so in order to carry this out, I think we just would have to eliminate, one spot in between.
In
each one,
between, not necessarily, because if
Just
there's 5
as
sites.
a rule.
But there's 10, you'd only have to remove 2 and 2, so that's 4 versus 5.
Right, and if 2
So-
sites are well spread, keep them both open, I would think. I mean, you can use common sense in this too.
But yeah, I think.
It depends how much work she wants to go to, but we do have to make it a kind of a rule.
Well, why can't we take this same application that we have for these businesses and have her give you an approved plan, and then you can go through there and say, no, you keep 2 sites, they're too close.
That's fine,
And have her give you and then you approve that.
Just
Yeah,
as
'cause
good
they
as
have a
anything is
map.
do that and then just plan on going out there with her and doing the plan together so that it's,
Because they do have a map, and so that would probably be pretty helpful.
okay.
Yeah, okay, so she, wants to be open with the governor's directive on Sunday. Can we give her a plan like this until she gets it worked out with you?
I can, yeah, so basically I'll come down tomorrow and
Oh, okay.
we'll get the plan. I mean, if she can be open on Sunday, well, she can't until Monday, the 27th, right?
No, I think that was said Sunday, didn't it?
The churches are Sunday.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's- okay, so it
Retail
doesn't,
and
that
everything
doesn't
is the
matter,
well, it's the 27th, so.
right? Yeah, so she could work with you on Monday then, would that work?
Yeah,
Say your Saturday?
Mhm.
I mean, technically it's 8 AM on Monday, but if she can wait
It's up to you.
2 hours, we can hammer out those details. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
And I may do it over the weekend just to get it done.
okay. I'll make sure you have her phone number too.
And I have it because,
Oh,
and
okay.
to be honest, maybe on my way, depending on how we work here, I can just swing in there and give her a heads up.
Okay. That's one of those, it's like golf. Let people get out and swing their club, because they're getting fresh air, they're getting vitamin D, they're getting, the sun rays that kill
Give them some mental health.
Right? Camping is
Mental
the
health.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
I really need to go fishing.
So then, she will put together a plan then for the gazebos, the docks.
I would say gazebos, maybe phase 1, do we want to worry about gazebos?
I would say like Mike said, let her put together a plan and you guys work it out.
Okay.
Would that work?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think so.
So the only other question then that goes beyond maybe what you're doing is, she wants to do some extra, boat docks. So there's the courtesy docks, which are right next to the ramps, 3 ramps. She wants to be able to have some extra ones there for folks to get them off of the ramp, because there's a bottlenecking that happens there too. If she can have those spots for people, then she spreads it out a little bit more. So
Is that
what-
parking or,
parking for boats.
yeah, that's what you're
Docks.
talking about.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
just
I
for the
just
boats
wants
themselves.
authorization to put up a fence, a safety fence, which also. lets people
So
out.
right
Who's
now,
good with that?
the main one is empty, so they can't even use it. I mean, the water's so low, they can't even use it
Right.
now.
But she needs to get this ordered,
Oh, I see.
right?
Yeah.
So, and it will become a problem.
Yeah,
As soon as
it
we
will.
get water in there. Yeah, the docks are all filled or sold. So that would be the reason for thinning out. So are you guys good with that plan and letting me get another fence? Right? Okay. Okay, so you'll work with Sharon and just like another business. Perfect. Okay. Just for documentation, can I make a motion that we approve Sharon to set up the additional post spaces and get the fence for the docks to the east of the 3 ramps?
Is there a second? No second. Motion made second, give Shannon a pay for additional documents. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Did you make a motion that they would close the bathrooms and go half the lights would be open?
No, I think
Or is it
based on
just
what Mike
based
said, that
on
was
the
gonna be the
plan?
plan you worked
Okay.
out with Sharon?
Okay,
Okay,
but I have the authority to say that the bathrooms have to be closed, because that's not part of that directive, whether a bathroom, so.
so you would like a motion for your own documentation as
I
well?
think so.
Probably not a bad idea. So, how about, a move that if necessary, based on your conversation with Sharon, Board of Health authorizes the closure of spaced out campsites, and the bathrooms through, further review.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
One more question I have if we're done with all that stuff. I would like to amend our memo until we can get together again for public health. I would like to authorize the standby pay as needed on weekends. The reason why is it has come to my attention that our public health staff is spending closer to 15, 16, 17 hours per day on the weekends with phone calls and following up with COVID infections. And it's nowhere near just the 8 that we authorized. It's $2 per hour. The fee or the additional hours are covered by the state with that grant. So that's my motion and that's my request.
Is there a second?
Is that something we can do in the Board of Health meeting?
It would be, we can make it a commission amendment and then none of this we can really do. Anyway, we would do it just like the contracts we've been doing and bring it to a commission meeting. We cannot, but what we'll be doing is finance will have to then go back and redo paychecks, which if you want to do that, you can do it too. But this could be something that the Board of Health takes to the commission to get done. Because we are kind of over public health.
Yeah, I mean, I would do phone calls as early as 7:15 and as late as 10:50 that night. And we have 15 minutes to respond to the state if they call. And so, you know, they tell you have a positive case, then you have to go to work because you have to get those people isolated. You have to find out who their contacts are, even if it's at 10 o'clock at night. And as you know, the lab runs 24 hours a day. The sooner we can get those people isolated and their contacts quarantined, the better everyone is. Yeah, and just complaints. You know, I've had complaints that I've had to go check out at weird times of the day. You know, I know that you all know that I used to work hospice. When we took call, we were on call from 5 o'clock on Friday till 8 o'clock on Monday. And basically you had your phone with you when you were in the shower. And I take it that seriously, because I don't want anybody to get this and then, go out and now freely roam around in the bars and whatnot, and pass this disease on. So, I don't know. It's not that big a deal. It's just that, this whole 5 weeks has been tough.
My thinking when I saw the email was we made a mistake on Monday out of just, we didn't know. And we only did 8 hours without understanding the weight Teresa is through this pandemic. So it was just an attempt to correct our mistake. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, I understand it, I just know this is the proper reason to do it.
I think that we can, as the Board of Health, we can approve it, we make a recommendation to the commission
Okay.
that we do that. And that way we have it documented again so it's covered by the coronavirus, which means it's covered by the state's grant money. So that way we have a double documentation of what we're doing there.
And that's what this funding is for. Not sure that they're going to let us use it for actual day-to-day operations at this point. Our wages still are probably gonna come under FEP, under Public Health Emergency Preparedness, which, we are almost at the end of that funding period, and this funding goes for a whole year. So this funding basically is for on-call or standby pay, overtime, all the kind of stuff that we just wouldn't have to do if it wasn't for this virus. So, yeah, I mean, I think what Mike said probably was appropriate.
So I amend my motion to make this a recommendation so that we have the documentation for COVID-19 or following through with that commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Motion carries. Is there anything else to go up before the board? If not, we will adjourn. That's correct.
We had been asked a question, Nicole and I had about anything, is there anybody from a ministry association that had a question?
Just now.
Okay.
Actually, it just popped up. Are you ready for this comment?
Yes.
Okay. This is from Jay Crush. Where do churches fit in this? They were superficially mentioned and added to the shutdown, but I have not heard them mentioned specifically in reopen.
So I can speak to that. I have had, and they were already speaking amongst themselves, and we're going to, realizing how busy I am, we're going to visit after our conversation amongst themselves, was my understanding. I gave them all of the recommendations and the requirements for the church, and they had already, most of them had a meeting and kind of planned on what they were going to do with their services and stuff. So I believe they understand the do's and don'ts and what they need to do on Sunday.
So from the regulation standpoint, what I understand is not taking any specific action on churches. So it would be the governor's guidance, which would be in effect, and it's not, he mentions houses of worship, and then I guess anything under general guidelines would apply.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And the commission and the board is not going to make a deviation from that?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. It mainly was the small family groups, social distancing, half of the capacity,
the shorter the better. Some of them were talking about not even having choir singing because, you know, that kind of spews out, you know, spit and whatever. So they were kind of talking about maybe just having one person sing. So, you know, we had a lot of conversation like that, just ideas on ways to just kind of, you know, even lessen the factor. We can't make them do more, but unless they want to. So we can make them do more, we can't make them do less. That's what I meant to say. So, but yeah, basically just the governor's directives and just, you know, some advice. So
Just
cleaning.
remember that they have a lot of vulnerable people, typically the elder crowd is part of the church. Just remember to remind them it's okay to stay home.
Right.
And I'm sure they will still be working with that.
So one pastor brought that up. He said he doesn't think that he has a half a dozen people that aren't over 65. And so he doesn't think that a lot of them, you know, probably will come, but he knows that some will. And so I just, you know, told them to distance and wear masks if they can have their church members make masks, have lots of hand sanitizer and brief, you know, because we all know that it's one of those viruses that the longer you're exposed to it, the more likely it is that you're going to get it. So short exposure time. So.
Last question, are we gonna do an announcement of some kind, press release, or send, you know, public documents, go out somewhere for the world, you know?
I
As far
think
as
we
the decision
talked
you
about
made.
that already. We're gonna do a PSA.
Okay.
Any further comments?
Mike, did you get everything you need from us?
Good.
Okay.
I guess I'll tell the last thing. I sent an email May 4th or 5th. There'll be the court meeting. We've been invited to have people at the courtroom and appear by video with the judges and Helen to discuss the plans going forward for court functions.
And that's going to be held up in our courtroom?
Correct. We'll video in to Helena.
If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn at 5:56. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nicole.
Oh, nice job.
Do it.